Good afternoon, Year 9. Today we're continuing with our Paper 2 work just to the end of this week. So that's today and tomorrow. And then we're going to go on to Much Ado About Nothing, some Shakespeare, you'll be pleased to hear. I certainly am. I love this play, Much Ado About Nothing. Anyway, today we're carrying on with our language and structure analysis of a text, the text we looked at yesterday. But before we get to that, here's your do now, which is related directly to the assessment that you're going to be doing at the end of the year. So what do you think is the most important theme in Of Mice and Men, and why? I want you to write a short paragraph and include a supporting quote. And I've got one underneath there, look. Nobody ever gets to heaven and nobody gets no land. That's Curly's wife says that. And the theme is the men in the book have no power over their lives. So powerlessness, you could say. So do that. I'll give you 5 minutes and then we'll go on to the next slide. Okay, our learning objective today is to practice paper 2 question 3 language and structure analysis. And as ever, don't write the objective in, just write the title in, which is pretty much the same thing. But paper 2 question 3 language and structure analysis. This is how it would look in the GCSE. You would have had 2 texts, but question 3 is about text 2, the Telltale Heart, the one that we read yesterday and looked at, and today we're looking at again by Edgar Allen Poe. So the first thing it always says is look at whatever lines it is they want you to look at. On this occasion it's lines 1 to 13. Now you must put brackets around those, just put a marker at the top and the bottom or highlight them in some way. Because once you start looking closely at it, it's easy to drift outside of those lines, and if you do, you don't get any marks for that. You're wasting your time. So look again at lines 1 to 13, highlight those, and then the question is, explore how the writer presents the protagonist as being mad. Support your ideas by referring to the language and structure of this section using relevant subject terminology. Subject terminology is simply metaphors, similes for language, or dashes and punctuation for structure. So write that question into your books. I'll give you 5 minutes to do that, and then on to the next slide. This is what you need to do to answer this question successfully. You need 2 structure paragraphs that answer the question and 2 language paragraphs that answer the question. Both of these, obviously, as we all know, have to have evidence. Evidence being quotations from the piece of writing. You must include subject terminology, and you must always say what the effect on the reader is or is intended to be. Even if, because students quite often say to me, well, it's had no effect on me at all, sir. The fact is, if that's the case, which is perfectly understandable, you have to write whatever it was you thought the writer, whatever effect you thought he was trying to create. Okay, now I want you to write that into your books also before we go on to the next slide, so I'll give you 5 minutes to do that. And here it is, the first sort of third of the Telltale Heart by Edgar Allen Poe. Let's read it again just to get us back into it. True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am, but why would you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How, then, am I mad? Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so, by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded with that caution, with what foresight and with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently, and then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed. Now stop there. As you can see, I have highlighted lines 1 to 13 to stop me going outside of it. Now, you've got this copy of this story, so you can either put little brackets at the end or just in some way highlight it so that you know not to go out of it. Now I'm going to pick out a piece of structure first of all, to show you that it answers the questions, that shows the protagonist is going mad. So structure's always in red with me. So, oh no, hang on. In red, there's this rhetorical question, but why would you say that I am mad? Now, if someone asks you, this protagonist is clearly sort of talking to himself, isn't he? And the rhetorical question, why would you say that I am mad? If you're talking to yourself, it means you're mad, doesn't it? You wouldn't say that if you were of sound mind. So there's the rhetorical question is obviously structural, and there that shows protagonist as being mad. And there, language-wise, you've got the where is it? The bit about the metaphor. Here it is. He had the eye of a vulture. That's a metaphor. So you've got your language, the eye of a vulture. Terminology, it's a metaphor, and both of those would have the effect on the reader of making the protagonist seem very unstable. All right, so have a think about that, and then we'll go on to the next slide. Here are two paragraphs I've done for you, or done to show you, one language, one structure, both with subject terminology and both discussing the impact on the reader. So the first one, the writer uses the phrase, he had the eye of a vulture to describe the old man's sightless eye. The metaphor, eye of a vulture, makes the old man seem evil and will cause the reader to feel some of the protagonist's madness. There you are. So you've got the language, you've got the subject terminology, you've got the effect on the reader. Then the rhetorical question, which is a structural point, you will say that I am mad, suggests that the protagonist is mad. If someone who is obviously talking to them asks if they are mad, it is safe to assume that they are. This would make the reader feel that the protagonist was capable of anything, and therefore mad. There you are. On to the next slide when you've inwardly digested that. And here's the question again. Question 3 is about text 2, The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allen Poe. Look again at lines 1 to 13. Don't forget to highlight those so you don't go outside of them. Explore how the writer presents the protagonist as being mad. Support your ideas by referring to the language and structure of this section using relevant subject terminology. And I want you to answer this question without using any of the evidence that I've just used to model for you how it is that it's done. So Year 9, more and more of you are starting to send me work now, so I'm giving out lots of achievement points, but some of you still aren't, and I appreciate there might well be sound reasons for that. But if you can't do the work anyway, and we'll have a look when I get back. So enjoy that, and I will speak to you tomorrow.